Hello and welcome to my channel on human design. Before I get into the question and answers for this week, I just want to let you know that on Tuesday evening, there's an event which you may be interested in attending. This is the trailer preview for a film I was involved in Ibiza late last year. Me and some of my fellow colleagues from the old days, which I hadn't seen for 20 years, came together to be interviewed for a film on human design and global cycles as we are approaching 2027, which I know most of you know. So there's a trailer premiere happening on Tuesday, and it's also tied to a Kickstarter fundraiser, which will include a number of different speeches and talks from some of the original teachers and the original people that were around Ra when he was alive. So something to have a look at. And the trailer premiere, I think, is 25 euros or something. I have no financial interest at all in the film or the promotion. Just thought I'd say that. But I think you're going to find it interesting. And we'll be there gathered together for about 2 hours or so, being questioned by, I don't quite know who, about human design and what we think. And you're going to hear different views from different people, which would be interesting for you, I think. So if you want to go into that, it's 4% spelt out. So 4 PERCENT, 4%.me, M-E. And that will take you to the website, which will take you to the putting in an email and going for the trailer premiere event, which begins at 8 o'clock in the evening, UTC time, on Tuesday, the 18th. Okay, that out the way, let's get into the first question. And we start with a rather provocative question from Qis Brown. And Qis asks, do you think there is an argument that Ra is literally just doing what everyone else is doing, rebranding, adding his own flavor, and of course gaining popularity, earning money, since human design originates from the 64 hexagrams of the I Ching? Well, thank you for your cheeky question, Qis. No, I don't think he's doing the same, or he did the same as everybody else is doing. This isn't based on the I Ching, it's based on a synthesis of different ancient wisdoms and modern science. So yes, I think it is time there may have been the association with the codons of genetics and the I Ching, but to create a whole synthetic system and a science based not only on that, but also putting the I Ching within the body to be able to discern the circuitry of tribe and logic and individual and abstract, to be able to go deep into the attributes as they are lived out that can be validated through the experience of people within a science that you can go even beneath the living of it, down to the motivation behind what's going on with the attributes, to the frequency, to the base where the neutrinos come in. The whole concept of the quantum being more than the sum of its parts in the channels, and the connection to the Kabbalah in that. There are many, many things, and the more you know about human design, the more you see its perfection. So no, I don't think Ra is doing the same as everyone else and rebranding it for money. You know, he had no choice with this, as I have no choice with this. When you find the truth and you can speak the truth through the keynotes that he taught us, through the ways of actually being able to share this knowledge with others, to include the others in it, in the process, to actually transform one's life through strategy and authority. There is so much more than just the 64 gates of the I Ching. And don't forget his translation of all those gates and lines, all 384 of them, is an example of profundity. Did he make money out of it? Yes, he did eventually. Not for a while. I mean, it was a struggle, like anything at the beginning. But eventually, I mean, the 4323 in his Ajna to throat is indeed a material line. Did he do it for the money? No. Money comes as a byproduct of service. Money comes as a byproduct of being aligned to something higher. I mean, in the right way. It's not like he bought us a lot of nonsense. He bought us a verifiable science, and a very deep one, and one that had mystical connotations in many ways as well, to the life that humans don't really live much. So deep, profound understanding at multiple levels was not just got from the 64 gates of the I Ching. So that's my answer to you. Cheeky question. I hope I've answered it well. And if you ever keep going into the depth of it, you'll see. I mean, it's a knowledge that has a profound effect on anyone wanting to find the truth. And it's more than simply reading words. It's the verifiable feedback of the experience of living through your own design. All right, let's move on to the next question. Deep Learning for Growth asks, your explanations are really insightful, Richard. One thing that I am still trying to figure out as a splenic projector, with the 4816 on the personality side and the 4323 mostly design side, is how I can discern the intuitive knowing of my spleen, which is my authority, from the unique knowing of my 4323, which comes from my mind and is not my authority. Sometimes I find myself being extremely vigilant and fearful, assuming that there's something to be afraid of. But I don't know if it's coming from my spleen, or I should listen to the warning, or if it's made up by my mind, especially considering that the 23-4 has the word paranoia in it. I have gate 18-2 in my design side. Could it make me unconsciously search for things that are wrong, even if there isn't anything wrong in the situation? I also have gate 21-2 and an undefined ego, again on the design side. Could it make me obsessed with controlling every detail of the situation, even if my control is not needed? On top of these, I have survival view as part of my variables. For example, I noticed that when in the dentist's office, I had certain thoughts about whether the tools the dentist used had been properly cleaned or not, and it made me very fearful. I want to make sure that I respect the messages of my spleen, and I also want to make sure that I don't create problems where they don't exist. Okay, Deep Learning for Growth. Thank you for the question, and it's a good question for other people too. How can I discern what is from my mind as opposed to what is beneath the throat and part of my authority? Well, you've got to assume at the beginning of this journey that the mind is in control of the life. And the 4323 has this certainty about it, that what it thinks is always right. I mean, it is its own unique insights, and it is very fond of them. And it is the way that they translate the world in their own structured view. However, whatever you think, doesn't really matter when you're in the life and you're here to deal with the life in the correct way. So your spleen is the authority, and it's there to translate in the moment something you need to be aware of. And it will speak to you not through the thoughts, but through the sensations in the body, the goosebumps that run along the skin, the tingles in the temple, the hackles on the back of the neck, the shiver that runs through you in the moment, when you suddenly become alert of a particular thing that you need to be aware of. The difference is the awareness is in the now, and the 4323 is going to keep on thinking what it thinks. You're not to pay attention to that. Pay attention to the body. And this paranoia you speak of, this fear you speak of, when we're talking about fear, we're talking about awareness centers, the anxiety of the ajna, and the fear for physical survival in the spleen. The spleen is there to keep us alive in the now. You've got the 18 line too. The 18 is the fear of authority, in the sense that it's afraid that authority doesn't know what it's doing. Do they know what they're doing? Has the dentist really cleaned the tools? I mean, it's a classic. And the 18-2 is also the awareness that there are some things that cannot be fixed. So yes, it's a critical, intuitive awareness of what's wrong in the pattern. And it's also there to be able to challenge authority, to be able to bring people onto your wavelength with the 4816, to really get the application out. So the 18 is there, yes, and it's going to be aware of what's wrong in the now, and afraid that, well, if something goes wrong, then I'm going to die, and there's nothing I can do about it. And yes, survival in the variable will also amplify that up. But how do you know? When the mind keeps on thinking and imagining what it could be, putting its own unique perspective on what's actually happening and taking it out of control. The spleen will give you a sensation in the now if there's danger. That's what you obey. And there can be an obsessive quality about the 18-2, and then that gets fed up into the mind, and you think again and again, is it safe? Is it safe? Do they know what they're doing? And also remember, with your particular awareness in the spleen, it's going to be tracking what's going on. You know, is the verification for my fear? You know, is the dentist showing signs of being sloppy? Has he followed the protocol that you're used to? Has he deviated in any way? Your spleen will be tracking that. And if it receives confirmation, it will amp up another sense, you know. So don't worry. I mean, you're there to be alert in the moment, to protect yourself, and you will be. Just don't overthink things. It's the overthinking of things in the 4323 that is the thing to ignore. Okay, I hope that's helpful, and thank you for the question. Our next question is from Mark My Words, Canada. And they ask, Richard, I appreciate your obvious great goodwill and expert analysis. Thank you. I have a question about a unique aspect of my chart. For background, I am a 4-6 projector, right angle cross of explanation, personality 4323, design 449. I have 4 full channels, 1156, 4323, 2644, and 731. I have gate 4 3 times in my chart, all on the design side. In the Sun, 4 line 6, Venus 4 line 2, and Mars 4 line 6. In the past, I've understood this gate as youthful folly. Recently, I believe you refer to this as the gate of the liar. Okay, aha. As you say, everything has value. I haven't made much headway in regards to the intolerance aspect of this gate. I believe a greater understanding could help my progression. Would you please share your insight about the possible significance and meaning of this 3 repeat of gate 4 in my chart? Sincere thanks, and thanks again for the fun you provide. I'll pass the microphone on to you now. Well, thank you very much for passing the microphone back to me. All right, so again, if you look at the chart, and you can see that already there's the individual mind thinking what it thinks in its own way. Plus, you've got the abstract mind thinking about endless ideas and possibilities. So the mind doesn't necessarily agree with itself. Even your own thoughts, you can have arguments with yourself. You know, those times when you talk to yourself a lot, which is quite normal to have that with what you've got. You've got 2644, a tribal channel that is there really to promote things, to get people to say yes, to be naturally, instinctively able to manipulate those people around you in the way that works. And then the 731 there to lead others into a better future, but to lead yourself first. So quite a mixture, you know, quite a mixture. To have individual and logic and abstract and tribe, you have something in all the different circuitries. And that's quite something to keep an eye on. And what's keeping an eye on it? The 4th gate. When I say keeping an eye on it, this is the planning gate. It's not the gate of the liar, it's the line of the liar in the 4th line, which you don't have. So no, it's called youthful folly because it's an idea. It's an idea that isn't yet ready to be able to be spoken. It is thinking about how can we have a plan? How can we get a formula so we can be safe in the future? What is the formula? It's formulaic. And if we go to the gates that you've got, or to the lines that you've got, especially having it 3 times, we can see that it's in the 6th line twice. And the 6th line is kind of above the hexagram. It's aloof from it. Its formulas are not really anything they want to put energy into unless there's a point. So the 6th line is there to see that no matter how good the plan is, if you haven't got all the information, then it's best not to go ahead with trying to implement it. It's called excess because you can also ignore that and go, well, we're going to do it anyway. And it can be impatient. This is a good formula, let's try it, when it's not yet complete. And why is that the case? And that is really the case because when you're looking at the gates that you have in the 6th lines, they're looking to the next gate. They're looking to the next gate in the wheel. And the next gate in the wheel from the 4th gate in the quarter of duality is commitment, the power, the sacral power to commit. So this 4 line 6 is there for you to learn the wisdom of waiting until the formula is complete and you verified everything before you share it and trying to implement it, because that's going to involve energy. That's going to involve consequences in terms of time and energy and experience. That's its wisdom. And you talk about it being a gate of intolerance. It's actually, you've got the 4 line 2, which is a gate of acceptance, which is about being tolerant in the understanding that there are limitations in yourself as well as in others, you know, to take that into account. The logical circuit is really about being in the real world. What can we do that will affect the real world? What system can we bring in that can make life easier for people? But not everyone understands. Not everyone can see the whole plan. Not everyone can grasp it. And the intolerance perhaps comes from the 4323 in, you know, people don't get you all the time. You know, no matter how brilliant your idea may be, because after all, the 4th gate goes into this insight gate of the 43 and comes out in its own way, what it wants to say. Not everyone's going to get it. There's a lot of translation that's needed within your mental system. But the 4th gate, it's a weight. You've got it 3 times. So I think of it as a formulaic gate. Youthful folly, because an idea is just an idea until the experiment has run. You know, it's the beginning of something. And the folly is if you go with a plan that you haven't really thought out, that you haven't really tested, that you just go, this is going to work because it's, you know, neat and tidy, but there's a whole lot of other things you haven't considered, and the plan won't cover those. So yes, bit of a mouthful, but you did ask, so I hope that's been useful. And the main thing is it's a weight there, and it can often be over doubtful looking in the not self towards the 63. So trying to be certain and trying to get your certainty out, and also trying to relax your own concern about the future. Okay, so hope you're happy with that one. And let's move on to the next question. Now, the next question is actually a combination of 2 questions from Karzina. I have a question about variables and the common non-HD knowledge about brain hemispheres. So a lot of people outside of HD use the terms left brain and right brain relating to the dominant hemispheres someone has, as left being more logical and right being more creative. We can see the same themes used in the variables, the left mind being the logical and the right mind the creative. Is that really a correlation? And from Amidst the Grey, I thought about this quite a bit. Defined head at work, it never shuts up. My personal view is that the chart is far too nuanced to really even make a correlation. My dad is left brain in the chart and is hands down one of the most creative people I've ever known. Mechanic by trade and a can build anything with nothing type. God, I love those types. My son is a quad right and is actually very logical, and his chart shows that. Ra said that leftness is more active and rightness is more receptive. Active brains can be creative and passive brains can be logical. Maybe a potential correlation has more of a leg to stand on for the personality side, since this is what we tend to identify with. But I'm not convinced there is a correlation for the body side. Perhaps the general left stroke right brain concept could be seen as to how one might more likely to approach a task or solve a problem, but variable influences how we get there. My left brain dad would benefit from focusing and honing in. My right brain son and I would benefit by relaxing and letting the answer come by taking everything in. Both creativity and logic could emerge in either case. Who knows? In any case, it's a great question. Right. I mean, it's a good question. It's a good topic to talk about because the whole point of human design is it brings a clarity to the language that we use. And the language that's used outside of human design to some degree, not completely, but in a lot of the cases, it's very generalized. It's very generalized. And this generalized idea that logical people are not creative and receptive people are creative, I disagree with this. As you've seen, your son who's got a right variable is very logical. Well, yes, logic can be incredibly creative. You know, logic can follow patterns, can see where one thing leads to another, which opens up a whole new can of worms, which has consequences for that and consequences for this, and that leads there and this leads there. You know, the patterns appear before them once they go into the tracking of them, into the digging down and focusing on them. So I think we need to say that, you know, logic can be very creative. And your son can be very logical, but also creative. It's the way he takes in information. It's the way that the information is processed within him that the variable talks about. So things have to come in. He doesn't know they're there until he's asked, and then it comes out. It's also, I feel, a little handicapped in that I don't know their charts, so I don't know what the gates are in the ajna, in the head. So I can't really answer you as fully as I would like to, but I would say that this both logic, both left brain and right brain people can be creative. There's no doubt about that. They will use different ways, and a right variable person can be very, very logical. There's no contradiction to me. It's the way the information comes through and the way the information is processed. And you have to look at the other things going on with the chart and the life forces to really understand it. So let's not speak about the generalizations of left brain, right brain. I mean, that's a mechanic, and that's to do with the physiology of the body, and we can go into that, but it would be too much to talk about right now. The variables are more nuanced. The variables and what human design can tell you is going to make it easily understood, but I don't know the charts, so it's hard for me to draw a conclusion from that. Both are creative, and there's nothing to stop a right person being logical, but they will probably have gates of logic in them, or channels of logic in them that bring that out. So if your son is a quad right and has a logical channel or have lots of logical gates, then that's the explanation. So trying to tie things to the outside generalized thinking and saying, you know, what's it all about? Just leave that behind. Concentrate on human design. You know, you'll find the explanation within it. Yeah, but I need more. I need to see the charts before I can explain exactly the case that you mentioned. Okay, I hope that's been helpful. Thank you both for your questions. And let's move on to the next one. This question is from Channeled Explorer. I wanted to ask, what is the difference between planets in defined centers, planets in channels, and planets in undefined centers. For example, I have my north node in a defined ajna, 47.2, and my south node in the 22 line 2, but undefined solar plexus. What does this mean in terms of the first half of my life versus the second half? Okay, so there's a lot of questions in that one question, Channeled Explorer. What is the difference with the planets, whether they're in a channel or in a gate or an undefined center? The planetary influence is the planetary influence. So if something is in Mercury, it carries the keynote of communication. Whatever the gate may be, if Mercury is there, it is about communication, you communicating the way you communicate, what you communicate about. It will have that flavor going into whatever the characteristic is. If it's in an open center, it's liable to be over-communicative. So if you had an open throat and you had Mercury affecting the gate in that open throat, you would be over-communicating even more than an open throat does. You know, the urge to want to communicate, if we put it that way, the urge to filter things through getting communication across through that planetary influence, but overdoing it. There is always this overplay whenever you've got an open center. And this, of course, is where we get lost. We get lost in the not self, thinking there's always more we can say, for an example, or there's always more we can show, or whatever it may be. And that is a pattern that needs to be broken. The other part of the question was to do with the nodes, and there were other questions regarding the nodes as well. So the nodes are really the road that you walk. Okay, so what you're going to meet along the road. The south node is more the first part of the life up until the Uranus opposition, and that's usually around the age of 42, 43, 44. It depends on each chart. That doesn't mean that it's only in that side of your life, because the north node and the south node do cross over. They are one road after all, but there will be a greater propensity for, in your case, the charm school in the 22-2 to show itself. So social graces or disgraces, overplaying the emotional style in the 22, overplaying it. You know, it can be very charming, but it can be maybe a bit too charming in an open solar plex. And if you think about the first part of your life up until around 42 or whatever, you'll see that was what you met. That kind of energy was there, and you would be learning from it. If it's in your personality, then that's what you'd be conscious of. And in the 47, in the what we call the second half of the life, it's not that everyone lives to 84. I mean, some people live shorter lives or longer lives, but it's just one way of really understanding the maturity that we go through. The 47 line 2 is the gate of ambition, and the 47 is there trying to make sense out of the confusion of the past. And it has both a naive and a gifted way of doing that, a natural way of doing that. And here I'm speaking about the keynotes of the second gate. It's nothing that you need to develop. It's already fully developed. It's the way of you finding new perspectives to regard the past. And there will be more of that in the second part of your life. After all, you've also would have had more life to reflect upon, if it's in the north node. And the two together, that you meet along the path, the two together could give rise to all kinds of creative outpourings that come as a result of what you've met along the road, of what you've learned along the way, the grace of that, the melancholy of that, the resolve of that, the moving on from that, the meeting and opening up to something new as a result of what you've been through, to be able to know that this is for you and not this, because of the experience, because of the reflection. There are so many ways that you can describe that. So in a nutshell, it is the environment in which you walk and what you meet along the way, your kind of road, that you're here to walk along by being correct. So I hope that answers your question. Okay, well, I think that's all we have time for this week. Don't forget about the 4% trailer premiere and event that's happening on Tuesday. And if you've enjoyed this, please like, share, and subscribe. And I will be back again next week with something completely different. Take care of yourselves. Bye.